So welcome to the Brodart Tell Me More Around the World Children's Book Webinar. The webinar is sponsored by publishers Levine, Querido, Chronicle, CamCat, and HarperCollins. Today, 3 publishers are presenting books in a BookBuzz format, and authors Leslie Connor and Laura Ruby will be talking about their new books, and we're really excited about those. And about all of them. Our moderators are librarians from the Mamaroneck Public Library. Head of Youth Services is Terry Numa, and teen librarian is Caroline Cunningham. So we're going to start now, and I'm going to hand it over to Caroline. Caroline?
Thank you. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for having me as one of your moderators today. I have the honor to introduce our first speaker. We are going to be hearing from the marketing director at Levine Querido, Antonio Gonzalez Serna. He has 15 years experience developing marketing strategies for adult and children's book publishers, an advocate for diversity, inclusion, and equality. He's a founding member of Latinx in Publishing. He's passionate about graphic novels, graffiti, and guacamole. Founded in 2019 by Arthur A. Levine, Levine Querido is an independent publisher of children's books with a focus on previously underrepresented voices and creators from around the world. So thanks for being with us today, Antonio.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored, so honored to be here. I always love to hang out with my BFF in the whole wide world, Annalisa Sandstrom. So I'm so happy to be together with Annalisa. And thank you, Brodart, for having us. So I'm just gonna jump in and get started. Okay, so again, my name is Antonio Gonzalez Serna. I have 4 books that I'm gonna share with you today. There's 2 picture books and 2 young adult books. So the first book on our list, it looks like it is Freedom. Let me just scroll down over here. Freedom, I'm so beyond excited that this book is coming out with LQ. One of the questions that I like to ask is, did you know that one of the most important revolutionary groups in American history was started and driven by ordinary young people? This is Freedom, the story of the Black Panther Party, and it's coming from the acclaimed authors of Black Against Empire, which is an adult book, and introduces a new talent, Jetta Grace Martin. I want to just underscore that this is not a young adult version of that adult book. This is a whole new book that is like sort of founded, standing on the foundation of that research of that new book, and it brings Jetta's new voice to the story, to the narrative. This is meticulously researched. It's thrillingly told, and it's filled with over 150 photographs. What makes this book really special in my eye is that it has a specific eye toward the roles that women played in the Black Panther Party. This is a book about the Black Panther supporters, their history, their allies. It includes everything from the free breakfast program to the 10-point program. This, we like to say that this is a book about Black nationalism, Black radicalism, and Black people in America. Freedom will come out in January. It comes out the day after MLK Day in January, just in time for Black History Month. The next YA book on my list is Ironhead. The full title is Ironhead, or Once a Young Lady. This, how do I say, totally epic historical YA novel that was written in Dutch and has now been translated into English for the first time. We like to talk about this book saying that it's Mulan meets Joan of Arc meets Brave, with a lot of girl boss energy. This story is set in the 1800s in Europe during the Napoleonic Wars, and it follows 18-year-old Constance. Constance is not interested in marriage or being a young lady. So when her parents force her into an arranged marriage, She quickly robs her husband, joins the army, and impersonates a soldier. In no time, she becomes beloved in the regiment, and she survives rabid dogs, a duel, and a bullet to the head, which earns her the name Ironhead. This book reads like a film. It's fast-paced and snappy, humorous, and action-packed. The author is a filmmaker in the Netherlands, so that tells you a lot about his writing style. If you are a fan of an irreverent heroine, if you like Katniss Everdeen, this is a book for you. This book comes out on Valentine's Day, 2022. So the next two books I want to talk about are picture books. Let's start with Big Dreams of Small Fish. Okay, so meet Shirley. Shirley is also a girl boss, but she's only 6 years old. She's the youngest member of an immigrant Jewish family, and her goal is to make the family store a success. Except for this one challenge. Of all of Mom's specialties, the one that absolutely no one in the neighborhood will try is the delicious gefilte fish. So one day, Shirley is left alone to cover the store all by herself, and she comes up with this fantastic innovation, the free sample. Shirley slips little cans of gefilte fish to anyone who buys anything that day, and that night, the entire neighborhood gets a taste of something special. When Shirley's parents find out, she gets in trouble for giving away merchandise. But the next morning, there's a line outside the door with neighbors crying, wanting more of this delicious new gefilte fish recipe. We can all relate to the story of a bright, ambitious kid who wants to prove herself. This is a story about striving. It's about a loving immigrant Jewish family, and it's about the community that embraces them. And last, I want to talk about A is for B. What can I say? This book is so gorgeous. I love it so much. We actually have a new cover that if you go on Edelweiss or you go on Amazon, I think it's released everywhere, you'll get to see this brand new gorgeous cover. I will say this, it's incredibly hard to make an alphabet book that's fresh and eye-catching and that stands apart. The concept for A is for B is both simple and radical. Go on a journey with me. The word for bumblebee might start with B in English, but in many, many languages, it starts with A. So anu in Igbo, are in Turkish, or abella in Portuguese all mean bee. In Spanish, it's abeja. B is for monkey. At least it is in Balinese, Lithuanian, and Hindi. There are over 80 languages referenced in this book, and it incorporates words from indigenous languages to North America, as well as languages abroad. If you look closely, it's hard to tell and hear, but the artist, Ellen Heck, has hidden the letters inside the illustrations of all of the animals. This book features rich fact matter. It has over 80 languages mentioned. It has a full list, and there's a map that shows where those languages are most commonly spoken. And there's a QR code that you can bring your cell phone up to it or a URL, and it takes you to a webpage where you can hear all of the words spoken by a native or fluent speaker. A is for B is gorgeous, and it drops in April 2021. And that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Those all sound amazing. So I think we're gonna wait at the end for questions if we have time, just to make sure everybody has enough time to speak today. You can always ask a question in the chat or the Q&A box. Thank you so much. They all sound amazing. I think I'm gonna pass it over now to Terry.
Welcome again, everyone. I have the privilege to introduce Annalisa Sandstrom, who's an Associate Director of School and Library Sales and Marketing at Chronicle Books. Chronicle Books is an independent publisher based in San Francisco, and they publish adult and children's books. Welcome, Annalisa. I'm excited to hear about the 4 books that you're going to be sharing today.
Hi, Terry. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I do have to say, it is terrible to follow Antonio in a presentation. It's like a presenter's nightmare. So, Antonio, your books are amazing. I love all of them and can't wait to see kids meet them. Okay, back to me. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm happy to tell you about 4 upcoming books that are all extremely serious. Totally not true. And if I were to talk about the books in the order of what's on the shelf, I'd be starting with the book by Derek Wilder, illustrated by K-Fi Steele, called Does a Bulldozer Have a Butt? Spoiler alert, the answer is yes. But I would prefer to talk about that one at the end for obvious reasons. So I'm going to start with Upside Down Hat by Stephen Barr, illustrated by Gracie Zhang, whose work you may know from Lala's Words, which was published in July from Scholastic and was her debut as author-illustrator. I'm going to come back to our book by Stephen Barr. He is a literary agent, he's a delightful person, and this is his authorial debut. So on the surface, the Upside Down Hat is the story of a boy who is everything except his hat. He roams a beautiful but harsh landscape looking for the things that he's lost, but he realizes that the hat on his head is all he needs. He can drink from it, eat from it, shade himself from the sun, hide from pursuers. In the end, he finds all of the things that he had lost, but he realizes his hat is everything. So Stephen Barr said, I'm going to quote him, the writer, and words are the best. He said, quote, the Upside Down Hat is about recognizing that everything bad that happens to you is part of your story, and everything good that happens to you is part of your story, and your story is always moving on. So if you can accept the bad the same way you accept the good, you can start to move on too. When your world turns upside down, it's going to turn upside down again. So just turn with it. I know readers will come away thinking differently about what they own, what they need, what they hold most dear. And as some collection development folks have pointed out, it's a perfect conversation starter for talking with kids about needs versus wants. Gracie Zhang grew up in BC, in Vancouver, BC. She lives in New York City, but she has traveled all over the world. And she said that she based the landscape on her travels through Iran. So it's a stark desert, but it's bright and beautiful. And when you get the finished copy, you have to look for the pink cats that she inserted for some frivolity. Next, we have, go to the next slide, and then I'll awkwardly come back to Bulldozer. Okay, so next is Endlessly Ever After by Laurel Snyder, illustrated by Dan Santat. And I have to ask the question, what's better than a book with one fabulous ending? How about a book with 34 fabulous endings? So Laurel Snyder and Dan Santat teamed up to bring you this compulsive down the rabbit hole, pick your path reading adventure that will totally envelop kids and adults. They'll definitely be going back for more. I got totally lost in this book in the best way possible and forgot that I was actually preparing for a presentation, because of course you keep flipping back to the page to choose a different path. So does our main character head to grandma's house, or does she follow the wolf? Does she go down the path to see what's in the house decorated with candy, of course, or does she go back to the beginning? Spoiler alert here is she gets eaten often, or crushed by a bathtub. And I don't know if did I already mention that it's wonderful rhyming text. Laurel started writing this book years ago, and at a dinner maybe in 2018, she and Dan were talking about working together, and they decided that this project would be perfect. And we just had a call with them yesterday, and Dan shared that this book which was a huge undertaking, it's 92 pages long, was his pandemic project and kept him busy and sane. So there's that. So the next book that I have for you is One Sun and Countless Stars by Henna Khan and Merdok Damini. This is the third concept book they have done together. The previous titles are Crescent Moons and Pointed Minarets, which is about shapes, and Golden Domes and Silver Lanterns, which is about colors. And here in One Sun and Countless Stars, we're counting objects and blessings. It's a concept book with wonderful rhyming text, and it's also a window into the Muslim world. There are stunning illustrations that juxtapose old and new, ancient and new-ish. I realized that I was calling one of the new things a VW bug from the 70s, and I'm like, oh, it's really new. Anyway, I learned 9 new words from this picture book. I already knew the word Hajj, otherwise I would have learned 10. And I just, like, how many picture books can you say that about? And my favorite anecdote about this pair of creators is that years ago I presented crescent moons and pointed minarets to a buyer at Brodart, Wendy, who buys kids books, and she marveled at the like detailed illustrations. She jokingly said, Murdoch, the illustrator, must have really good markers. And I was like, yes, she has the best markers. That is definitely the secret. So I think of Wendy every time, Brodart, every time I present these books. So the last one I have for you is supposed to be first on the shelf, is Does a Bulldozer Have a Butt by Derek Wilder and K-Fi Steele. This is, so Derek's first book, The Longest Let's Go Boy, illustrated by Katya Chenmouth, published 3 weeks ago. This is his second book with us. And illustrator K-Fi Steele, she was a Brown Handler writer in residence at the San Francisco Public Library when she illustrated this book. So the premise is that a little girl and her dad are on a walk to school in what happens to be San Francisco, but kids works everywhere. And it happens to be an actual walk that you can take. And she starts asking her dad if different objects and creatures have butts. So does a bullfrog have a butt? Yes, it's spotted and bumpy. And does a blobfish have a butt? Well, it looks a little grumpy. So our main character learns that almost everything has a butt: pigeons, helicopters, lemurs, aliens, sailboats, pirates, bulldozers. A crayon doesn't, but it can draw one. It's extremely serious. I don't know why people are laughing. So I think kids will delight in finding the 200 butts hidden in this picture book. And I know that's a lot of butts. So I will leave you with this closing bit. We're almost at my school. I say hi to my best friend. Does this story have a butt? Certainly. It's called The End. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love them all. I can't wait to add them to my collection. The storylines and the illustrations are just wonderful. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
So we're on to Bridget, Caroline.
Yes. So our next speaker is Bridget McFadden from CAMCAT. She's always loved reading and writing, so she just decided to make a career out of it. She received her MA in publishing from Rosemont College in 2019. As the assistant editor, she spends her days copy editing and developmental editing titles. CAMCAT Books is a fiction imprint of CAMCAT Publishing, an independent publisher of print, digital, and audio titles that regularly receive glowing reviews and awards. Thanks so much for being with us today, Bridget, and I can't wait to hear about all these upcoming YA titles.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Bridget McFadden, the assistant editor at CAMCAT Books. We were founded in April of 2019 by Sue Arroyo, and we publish fiction, adult, and YA titles. And our first book was published in June 2022. So I have 4 books to talk to you about today. 2 of them are part of a series, actually, Shadows Over London and Justice at Sea, but I'll start with A Measure of Serenity, which was pub date was yesterday, which is exciting. So A Measure of Serenity is about Serenity Ashdown, who's your normal awkward teenager, but she has a quirk. She counts and calculates everything. She always has numbers on her mind. But when her father suddenly disappears, she follows him to a parallel dimension where there are alter egos of her, her father, and others in her world. The feds in this dimension say they'll help get her home if she helps them open the portal between worlds. But she learns their intention is to invade Earth because their version of Earth is dying. Serenity learns that her alter ego was killed during a resistance, So she assumes the other Serenity's identity and uses her unique abilities to lead the resistance in a fight against the super government set to invade her universe. So this one is definitely for fans of The Sound of Stars and The Wicker King, and also Marvel comics and The Hunger Games too. It has that vibe. And so what's so compelling about this story is that there's a huge character arc for Serenity. She begins not as a strong character. She doubts herself often. And while you're reading, you kind of feel that self-doubt with her, but you're rooting for her the whole time, not just to save the universe, but also to better herself and grow as a character. And this is a very relatable book to shy readers who are looking for that introverted character, but that also see them step out of their comfort zone and just grow into a stronger person. So this one, oh yeah, this one came out yesterday, and it's young adult fiction for readers about like 13 to 18. So then moving on, I'll talk about Justice at Sea and Shadows over London together. Shadows over London is out now. That's the first book in the Empire of the House of Thorn series, and Justice at Sea comes out December 7th, 2021. And then there is a third one as well, which comes out next fall. So this series follows Justice Kazrick and her siblings when their father uproots their lives and takes them to a strange mansion on the outskirts of Victorian London. The Faerie are invading, and the Kazrick siblings find their parents on opposing sides of the war. So throughout this series, the siblings and their parents are fighting against each other in the human-Faerie war, using magical powers that they never knew that they had. The series takes place during and after the war, following 15-year-old Justice, who was the black sheep of the family. She always has a plan. And this story is really cool. It has like a big family dynamic where the families fighting between each other and they're on opposing sides, but you'll see Justice have to make some moral decisions with her family in mind. So this is for fans of The Golden Compass and A Sorcerer to the Crown. And what's really cool about this series is that the author was inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia, which he read to his daughter when she was young. And when they were done the series, she was like, I want more. So he's like, okay, I'll write it for you. So he wrote this series, and she's way older now, but it was published this year. And yeah, so what's really compelling about it is just like the cool family dynamic and also the mentorship of it. And then lastly, I will discuss Contest of Queens, which I was lucky enough to be the development editor of this one. So it definitely has like a big place in my heart. I love this book so much. And it's loosely based on Jack and the Beanstalk, where Jax is a young female inventor from the lower realm, and she finds a note from Connor, who's a boy from the upper realm, not knowing that he's actually Prince Cornelius of the Queendom. They form an unlikely friendship for years, having never met. They just discuss they just form their friendship through letters, where she uses a hot air balloon to fly her letters up to him, and he uses a wooden boat to like sail the notes down to him. But there's a prejudice between the two realms, and that threatens their bond when the royal family visits the lower realm. So to save her people, Jax infiltrates the upper realm to compete in the Contest of Queens. This one definitely has, as Antonio said, lots of girl boss energy. She's a very strong female character, and it's set in a matriarchal society. So it completely shifts genders, where the queendom, it's called a queendom, not a kingdom, is run by the queen. And guards and knights are only female. And when there's suggestion of males trying to be knights, they're like, what? That can happen. So it's definitely like a twist on our patriarchal society that we live in here. And so it's all about inclusivity. It definitely has Hunger Games meets Knots of Crosses with a fairy tale feel. And a good comp title is the Selection series. So the book is appropriate for many age ranges from like 12, 10 to 18. But each reader in the different age ranges will get a different message, where more advanced readers will kind of discover the deeper meaning that it's silly to think that one gender is superior over the other. Yeah, and so that is that is our 4 young adult books that I'll be presenting today. And thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. They all sound amazing, and I'm going to order them right now. Okay, Terry, I think you're up next.
All right. Again, it's my honor and privilege to introduce you, Leslie Connor. She's an author of many award-winning books for children, including The Truth as Told by Mason Buttle, National Book Award finalist and winner of the ALA Schneider Family Book Award, Waiting for Normal, winner of the ALA Schneider Family Book Award, A Home for Goddesses and Dogs, All Rise for the Honorable Perry T. Cook, and Crunch. She lives in the Connecticut woods with her family and 3 rescue dogs. And Leslie, I'm so excited for you to be here today to introduce your latest middle grade title, Anybody Here Seen Frenchie? So welcome.
Thank you so much. Wow, thank you for your warmth. This is an enjoyable day for me as well. I love hearing what else is out there. It's enthralling. I'm sitting here making notes. Well, I want to start with a little bit of cover love for Frenchie. Oh, good. Yeah, that's great. You can go to that slide. That's perfect, because then the audience can see too. This is the art is by the talented Ramona Kalitsky, and I just have to, direct you to it because she really puts you right into the story. You're looking at the back of Aurora Pauline Petriquin. She doesn't have any time to look at you because she's searching for a friend, and things are pretty urgent. She's a loud kid, kind of without limits, kind of doesn't know her boundaries so well. And she has been best friends with Frenchie, who is a nonverbal boy. And it's been about 3 years that they've been incredibly tight. And she's always been sort of psychologically responsible for him and her friendship. And in fact, that extends to the families as well. I think that's an important thing to mention. I mean, much of what I would have told you is in the Dear Reader letter anyway, but we can kind of jump off from there, and I'll give you some more insider bits to enjoy. So their friend, I think that the families also carry that sort of dedication to each other, which is something I like in a book. I mean, I like the way that our families have taken new different forms, different shapes, especially here in the United States. I think we're seeing it. I've always been interested in that, the changing of the American family. So that is kind of the setup. And as you know, Frenchie goes missing. That's why you're seeing the back of Aurora. She does have a butt, since we're talking about butts today. But the setting there is very clear, I think. So as the letter says, I had a couple of things on my mind, one of which was what happens to this friendship that's kind of nuanced by neurodiversity when one person is better able to start to employ strategies and kind of expand their social life, and the other isn't. There's a separation, and that is kind of part of how Frenchie gets lost. And that was the other big question I had, was how do people get lost, especially in a school setting or in a small town setting? How do they get lost and how do they stay lost? And what I mean is, what if we could have a bird's eye view? I mean, certainly most people have watched one murder mystery or another, or just a police thriller where you're searching for someone. And so that fascinates me, that element of story, and that kind of drives the plot. But if you had that bird's eye view, if you were a member of this small town on the ground, my questions were kind of, who has seen something? Who's seen something and didn't know it was important? And further, who's seen something and doesn't perceive it as important, or will not tell or cannot tell what they've seen? And this is why a person will stay missing. So this launched me into a couple of different points of view, which is not always my way. I'm usually in the first person point of view. Aurora is your main narrator, but Frenchie, in his very sort of poetic, limited kind of voice, has words. So we cannot say that he's really nonverbal. He's just nonvocal. He doesn't speak, but his thoughts are very, I think became very interesting. I desperately wanted to get that right. Did a lot of study of what it is, to be autistic, and that there's so much more going on than we think there is. So then I want to move to setting, because the cover also launches you into setting. Maps and terrain became so important to me writing this book. I was really interested in the inland features of a small coastal Connecticut town. Those of you who have been there know we have hiking, we have trails, we have mountains, absolutely beautiful things growing up from the ground, and all these things became important. And if you note on that 3x5 card that I mentioned in the beginning, there were two things I had written down, and one was flapping and tweeting, which refers to something that Frenchie does, but the other was a bowl in the earth. And for a while, I didn't know exactly what that was going to be until I began to visit these inland features of Maine and discovered an abandoned granite quarry. And then I knew I had my bowl in the earth, which I found both beautiful, historical because it was no longer functioning, but also dangerous and kind of mysterious. So that was where that came in. I'm really, as the search for Frenchie begins, got really interested in what is used today in modern technology in a search. It turned out that that the town was having everyone download an app on their phones, which they could then help so that there could be many, many people helping. I thought that this was really interesting, and I think that the kids will be interested too in this. I had these really messed up, scribbled on maps all the way along, and we shared those with the artist. And lo and behold, if you just look in my little block, if you're with me, she did an absolutely beautiful rendered map of the terrain of the area where Frenchie is lost. And you can kind of follow what happened and what mishappened, I say, as you read the book. So I hope it'll be much enjoyed.
Thank you so much, Leslie. There's so much in layers in your story that I'm really interested to get my hands on it now. So thank you so much. Okay, next up is Laura Ruby. And again, I have the honor and privilege to introduce you. Laura is the author of some of the most acclaimed novels for children and teens, including the National Book Award finalist, 13 Doorways, Wolves Behind Them All, and the Prince Award winning and National Book Award finalist, Bone Gap. Laura is on the faculty of Hamline University and lives in the Chicago area. So excited for you to be here today to share your new picture book called Tell Us All. Please tell us all about me and Miss Two, T-O-O.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for talking about your book, Leslie. When I'm writing novels, I'm so into setting and finding the interesting things about setting. So I loved hearing you talk about that. I'm happy to be here with librarians, some of my favorite people, which sounds like pandering, and it kind of is, but it's very true because I was one of those kids, and to quote Neil Gaiman, who was a feral child raised in a library and by librarians, and my first job was in a library. I was the world's worst library page. I was excellent at finding materials for people when they wanted books. I could find them. I was not so good at putting them back. First, because I wanted to read them, and second, and I didn't know this until I was in college, I have a form of dyscalculia where I flip numbers. So putting them in order, yeah, do such a good job there. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about libraries and libraries, but this book, Me and Miss Two, right here. Two things you should know about this book. One, it stars a librarian. There's a librarian right there. And two, this is a love story. This is a love story. Long, long ago, and far, far away from where I'm sitting now in the Chicago area, I was a single young woman living in my single bedroom apartment with a single cat that I kept alive, and I was very proud of that. We were mostly content by the two of us until I happened to meet this very handsome man when I was on a vacation in New Orleans. I met this man in a bar on Bourbon Street, which sounds racy, whole lot racier than it actually was. There were no beads involved. We actually bonded over a love for children's books. and funk music, and we danced the night away. And I thought I would never see this man again. But when I got home, I had a letter from him on actual paper. So I did what you would do, anybody would do in this situation. I married him immediately. Well, not so immediately, but very soon after that. But really, I married him and his 2 daughters from his previous marriage. I went from this single woman in my single bedroom with my 1 cat to living in a house with a husband and 2 children and more cats, because you always need more cats. Now, I was a step kid myself. I am a Gen Xer, which means that I lived in a time when parents got bored, they got divorces. It was just a thing they did. They was like, well, I'm bored, I'm going to get a lot of divorces. So I had lots of step parents and step siblings, and I considered myself an expert. Arrogant. I really just thought like, well, I know all about this. I was a step kid. I'm a stepsister. I know all about this stuff. I know that when you're walking into a new family, I mean, a family is an existing culture, right? It has its own rules and its own, I don't know, their own ways of doing holidays. It just has everything that its own customs. So even the most amazing and lovable kids would be wary, right, of anybody who's new coming in. They want to know who you are. They want to know if you'll take their dad or their mom away, or if you'll send them away. And their fears are really real. And as a step parent, and this is the part I really didn't understand when I was walking in the door, is that I had so many fears too. I had never been a parent. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to play. Like, you have to learn how to play. I didn't know how to play. I'm like, dolls, I don't know what I'm doing. That's what's going on. I felt really out of sorts. I didn't even know how to cut the kiwis right. And if you ask my stepdaughter, Jessie, this was a tragedy of epic proportions. She was 5 years old, and oh my God, you don't cut them in slow. Anyway, it was a big deal, let me tell you. And Jessie, my beloved stepdaughter, who's an adult now, I remember her when we used to sit in front of the TV or go out to dinner. She always insisted on sitting right between me and my husband. And one day she looked at me and she said, "Do you have a daddy? Because this is my daddy." So this is what you're walking into. And I think this is a pretty typical experience. So the thing that I did know, I might not have been an expert at playing or an expert at parenting or an expert at cooking, but I knew stories and I knew books. So that was how I bonded with the kids. I gave them books. I read to them constantly, especially to Jessie, who was very little at the time. She was 5. So I read to her every night, and that was our way of bonding. And years later, I was diagnosed with cancer, and my treatment was long and arduous and extremely boring. They don't tell you how boring it is to be sick. It's very boring. And I had this failed novel in my computer when I was starting to feel better. And I thought, well, maybe I'll pare it down and see what's really here. And I stripped it down to the source of inspiration, which was my own experience as a step kid and my own clumsy attempts at trying to meet my stepkids halfway. So that is me and Miss 2. It's the book that I wish I had when I first married my husband, something that I wish that I'd have been able to read to my stepkids. It's born out of the love that I have for my family and my gratitude for the home we were able to make together. So yes, it's a love story, but for all of them. So Miss 2 tells the story of Molly, and you see her little angry face on your screen, whose favorite librarian is Ms. Blue. She loves Miss Blue to death. Miss Blue always knows the greatest stories, loves her, until her father falls in love with Miss Blue and gets married to Miss Blue, and Miss Blue moves in and becomes Ms. Two. Ms. Two as in, is she coming too? And the story goes back and forth between the way things used to be and the way that they think that things are now. So it opens with this sort of the cataclysmic moment for most kids. Right here, I'll show you this. And you see, there's Molly there, she's drawing, but there's up in the corner, Dad and Ms. Blue getting along too well. And it opens, when Dad married Ms. Two, everything changed. And that's really what happens to kids, is they just feel like the earth is shaking under their feet. And it goes on, everything changed, even the wallpaper. But I liked that wallpaper. Molly, you said it looked like a bunch of angry thumbs. That was before. Before what? Before, this is before my house looked like my house and nobody else's. My dad was my dad and nobody else's. So what goes on, back and forth between the, what used to be and what is. And certainly eventually, Molly comes to understand that Ms. Two is nervous as well, and that the two of them come to start to develop their own ways of doing things together that are not, it's not what it used to be, but it is something brand new, and that is something that can be celebrated. The art I want to point out here is by the artist Jung Ho, who did Isaac Kiss in the Corners. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that book. And the thing that I love about it most, it's big-hearted and generous, and full of life and color. And especially what I like is that she allows, or she was comfortable with the range of emotions that Molly had. Molly is allowed to be angry, she's allowed to be irritable, she's allowed to look annoyed, she's allowed to look confused, and that even the inanimate objects carry some of these very complicated emotions. So you can see here Molly looking grumpy, and then her little bunny rabbit looks exhausted. And then this pillow here doesn't really know how to feel. The pillow's kind of ambivalent, which I absolutely love. So again, this is something that I hope that other blended families, or other blended in any particular way, whether it's your stepkids or found family or anything, groups of friends. I hope this resonates with other people. Leslie mentioned before about how American families shift and change, and I'm hoping that this will be something that many types of families would enjoy. And thank you for listening to me babble.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you had the courage to share that story with us. The artwork is amazing and the story is amazing, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, I think it's going to be a wonderfully book that's going to not stay on our shelves too long. Borrowed a lot. I think we're at the end. Elenita? I don't know if you have any questions in the chat.
I thought we could, Antonio, you might talk about your publishing group a little bit more, so that the librarians can hear about your new publishing program, if you don't mind. Nothing like putting you on the spot.
Oh no, I'm totally happy to be put on the spot. So Arthur Levine, you may have known him. He had an imprint at Scholastic for 23 years called Arthur A. Levine Books. Before that, he was at Knopf, and he decided that it was time in 2019 to launch his own independent company. And the guiding mission of LQ is to sort of spotlight and lift up previously underrepresented voices. And we like that previously underrepresented voices instead of like marginalized community or like diverse voices or something like that. So we focus on writers of all different backgrounds from all over the world. We publish books in translation. We have tons of books in Spanish. We have AAPI creators, Latinx creators, all, Black creators, all of the letters of the alphabet, LGBTQI, everything. And so we're really, really proud and thrilled to be launching in this new way.
So the title of your publishing house is Dear Levine. That's what it means, right?
Yeah, Levine Querido. Yes. So it has two meanings. So like dear is what querido means in Spanish and Portuguese, but Querido is also the name of a Dutch publisher that has a publishing house in the Netherlands called Querido Netherlands, and they're kind of like the FSG of Europe in a way, and they exhibit at all the shows, like Bologna, Frankfurt, Guadalajara, and they have a very, very just very strong presence. And Arthur wanted to keep the name of Emmanuel Querido alive. Emmanuel Querido was a publisher who was imprisoned and eventually killed by Nazis for publishing works that were not deemed appropriate by those governments. And so those regimes. And so Emmanuel Querido's family, after the war, continued the legacy. They continued to publish the books. They continued to keep that name alive. And in a small way, like, through Arthur and through LQ, we also keep Emmanuel Querido's name alive.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think all of these books really hit the mark with so many different ways of kind of giving us new awareness. Laura's, your book, to me, it could be any family. It doesn't have to be a stepdaughter. It could be a kid that's having problems with their mom or their aunt or anyone. And Leslie, your book to me is the friendship. And I love the idea of you do explore things differently than your friends, and things open up in your life or your friend's life, and sometimes you don't know how to deal with it. And so I just think every single one of these books really tell a story and really open our eyes to a whole new world. Thank you so much, all of you, for participating. Do you have any questions for each other, or do you want to have a little conversation, or you're done with this?
I just want to compliment Antonio on a beautifully curated list. I'm incredibly interested in your titles and happy to see it. Happy to see that come. It's great.
Yeah.
Yay! Oh, I appreciate that so much. Anyone who wants to email me, Antonio at Levine Querido. I'm not against sending books to everyone, so please reach out to me. I would love to ship books all across the nation so that people are reading them.
You're gonna be sorry you said that.
Yeah.
But no, that's wonderful. So I think we'll end unless anybody else has any more comments or any thoughts. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us, our presenters and also our attendees. The Tell Me More series happens monthly, alternating kids titles and adult titles. So keep a lookout for that. And this is being taped. Thank goodness I taped it. And we will be able to see it later. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.